Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Telecom video, let us discuss the Xbox One's online pricing for digital titles. Microsoft have actually hiked the prices by £5 for exclusive titles. Now, when the Xbox One originally launched on the 22nd of November, the digital versions of titles such as, say, Dead Rising 3, Rise, Forza, and so on were $44.99. That's Great British Pounds. Now, they're $49.99. Microsoft have said, this is from a spokesperson, that yes, pricing for select digital content in some markets has changed since launch. Digital content pricing is subject to change, and we may occasionally offer you various deals or promotions. Ultimately, pricing and promotions vary by region. Now, I would like to point out that in the UK at least, titles on the PlayStation 4 store, the PlayStation Store, are still more expensive than the Xbox One. Not much more, a couple of pounds, but still. So Microsoft still has you beat. Now, one argument that Sony made, and the reason that they have stated that, well, digital titles cost more cash, is because they want to keep shops like, for example, Game and Tesco's and other retailers, in other words, bricks and mortar businesses, happy. They don't want to piss in their cornflakes, basically. Because let's face it, if you start undercutting them, people are just going to say, you know what, forget this, I'm not going to go to the store, I'm just going to download the title on Xbox. So, for example, let's assume that they were to undercut a store, and let's say they were to put the game at 40 Great British Pounds, and the normal version is, the actual hard copy is 44. Most people are just going to plump for the digital. I think that's fairly safe to say. However, this isn't necessarily always true. There are companies which do, for example, Amazon, Greenman Gaming, Shop2, there are others in the UK that do actually run deals and promotions that actually make the hard copies cheaper than even Steam. Not necessarily the Steam sales, but those Steam sales are ludicrous in terms of their pricing, so it's unfair to compare most retailers to those. However, Greenman Gaming, Amazon, for example, they do run their own sales, which usually coincide quite nicely, may I add, or maybe a day or two either side, to Steam. Now, of course, this, is talking about the PC platform. One of the things that I'd said regarding the Xbox One, specifically with digital content, and I think many people felt the same way, is, look, okay, if you're going to lock us in to not being able to trade the game in other words, it's a form of DRM, right? You can't just easily trade that game in. It's the same as, well, Steam in that respect. They are going to be adding in Steam trading and much more besides, at least that's the plan. But we're still fairly early on those concepts yet. But the bottom line is, most gamers don't mind paying Steam's prices because you're pretty much getting the game for substantially cheaper than what you would in retail. That's not always the case, of course. From Sony's and Microsoft's perspective, it's extremely difficult for them, I imagine, in some ways, to make a decision regarding this, because they can't just, as I said earlier, piss in the cornflakes of big retail shops, because ultimately they are stocking the consoles. However, I also don't really think that many of those retail shops are going to say, you know what, you guys are undercutting us. Plus, as well, in my personal opinion, most people don't have the internet connection to download 40 gigabytes of data, at least yet. Obviously, the average connection speed, at least in the UK, is increasing, and that's a good thing. But most people still aren't going to do that, particularly when you take into account the rather, I'm just going to use the word titchy, hard drive space for the PS4 and the Xbox One. Now, obviously, you can, with the PS4, change the hard drive. But even so, it's not exactly, something you're going to want to do straight off the bat. And if you do, of course, you've got to re-download all your titles, assuming you've, done that. And in regards to 500 gigs, obviously there is actually less than that usable is not really that much when you consider games now are like 40 gigs for Killzone. Admittedly, other titles like, say, Resogun or whatever may be, say, 1 gigs, 2 gigs for indie titles. For me, however, I think it's going to take a lot for me to really take the next generation's consoles' digital networks seriously for full-priced retail games. For games like Resogun, that type of thing, indie games, which of course you can't really buy at retail anyway because they don't have the means for the distribution and so on, then fine. But games like Killzone at those prices, I'm just not willing, really, to cough up that amount of money when I don't even get the shiny box in the manual. I know that might sound really petty, but that's just how I feel. A lot of gamers were kind of expecting a Steam-like infrastructure. And I don't necessarily mean that in terms of, Steam has this amazing network which is impossible to copy, because it doesn't. There are competitors already to Steam, and I'm sure we're going to be getting much better on consoles, but we're not there yet. And with these prices, it's going to take a long time, I think, for gamers to really take it seriously. Obviously, if you really want a game really desperately, you didn't pre-order it, or the weather's really bad, you've got a foot of snow or whatever, sure, you're going to just download the digital version if you've got the internet connection to do so. But for those of you who don't, it's still actually cheaper for you just to say, you know what, screw this, I'm just going to order it on Amazon or whatever websites, or wherever you choose to do so. I mean, for example, in the UK on Amazon, Rise is selling for $44.99, Dead Rising 3 selling for $44.99. Killzone Shadowfall, a rather strange price of $46.21, and we could keep going like that. And obviously I'm just pulling Amazon because, well, everyone knows Amazon. I think, you've probably not been on the internet if you've not ordered from Amazon. But regardless, this is just an example of what I'm saying. So most people, considering websites like Amazon do deliver to your door, it's going to be kind of difficult for people to really cough up those extra cash. But as I said, Microsoft and Sony are in this position where, particularly as they're trying to get their system in the forefront of the store, they want that system to be visible, they want their system to be heavily promoted, and ultimately the retailers make a lot of their cash, not necessarily on the console sales, but even if, for example, they got a large cut of the console, you're only going to buy one Xbox One, you're only going to buy one PlayStation 4, but of course repeat customers are going to keep coming in to buy Knack and Killzone or Rise and so on and so on. In other words, there's a lot more money long term to be made out of those retail titles. So Sony and Microsoft are playing this balancing game where they want to start pushing their own infrastructure, they want to start pushing their own medium, but at the same time, and once again I'm going to use my favourite phrase of today, they can't piss in the cereal of basically those who are responsible for selling the products. And so it's down for probably those of us who want cheaper titles to just go on Amazon, go to Shop2, at least in the UK. Obviously, for you guys in the United States, you'd obviously, go to, say, Walmart or Best Buy or wherever you guys go to do your own shopping, or whatever region or territory you're from, and do your own shopping. But right now online pricing just can't compete. And of course many people are even more pissed because of the microtransactions in games, which doesn't really fall into this remit, if I'm honest. And I'm not someone who really gets super offended by microtransactions. I don't like some of it, if I'm honest. Like, I think it's kind of taking the piss when a full price game will then say to you, hey, you know what, buddy, you can unlock a new colour, all you have to do is pay like $2 or £2 or whatever the price is. That kind of thing annoys me. But if someone's going to say, hey, you know what, for like £14, we're going to give you, 6 months later, we're going to give you a whole huge new single player campaign that's going to, last you 7 hours, just for example. I have no problem with that. And EA, just for example, have done that with titles like Mass Effect, and some of their DLC was really good. But obviously that's kind of getting out of the remit of digital content. But Of course, they did sell it digitally, but it was a fairly good deal. But for full price retail releases right now, it doesn't really look like the store is the best way to go, at least in my personal opinion. And that kind of sucks. But anyway, it looks like definitely the PC is still going to be forging ahead in this. I mean, things such as the Steam sales, it's very difficult to beat them. I mean, just for example, the previous one that just went, the autumn sale, it was absolutely ludicrous. The deals were absolutely insane. You could be getting games like 75% off, and we're not just talking, you know, games that are like a year, 2 years old. We're even talking about some more recent releases, and that's just insanity. And honestly, that's the type of thing that I would like to see, but developers and publishers really need to start pushing that on the platform, as well as Sony and Microsoft. And as I said, I just don't really think we're quite there yet, which is a real shame. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's been a bit of a ranty one, I'll confess, but still, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.